YouTube Studio just did some funny business last month. I think I was mentioning it to you. And there seems to be now a disconnect between what Zoom sends and the link that we have on the Rock website, which is unfortunate. But I don't. Well, we'll see.
So
Zoom says live on YouTube. So
I'm gonna mute myself and can I? Yeah, I'm gonna mute myself and send out the putative calendar for Rock while you all are starting the meeting. Good. All right, cool.
Oh, and to my surprise, the YouTube stream is actually showing us even though we haven't technically started the webinar. So, okay, that's a surprise. So that's not good. But it's okay. Okay, so for all intents and purposes, we are live on the internet. At this point, I might as well hit start on the webinar. And that recording is going to the Zoom cloud. So we're cooking with all burners now.
I'm going to be on another computer for a little while. So if you call on me to respond, it's going to take me probably 15 seconds to get back over here, all right?
No sweat. Thanks for the heads up. I'm going to do what I usually do and prep a desktop I can use for sharing the agenda, and I'll put all of our names and faces on it.
Hi, Brian.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Bonnie.
Yay, Bonnie, nice to see you.
We can't hear you.
Well, that's because I had the mute button on.
That makes sense.
I said, I just worked out. I just got out of the shower. I'm hot and sweaty here, but.
Well, me wearing a suit jacket's probably going to have me hot and sweaty in a matter of minutes, too.
Yeah. I got to stay in shape so I can eat pecan pie Thursday and Friday.
Hey, Bonnie, what's happened to all your travels?
So all of my travels have come to a screeching halt.
Yeah.
And I just am so blessed that, I've been on every continent. Also, we even went to Antarctica that year. And so if we never take another trip again, we're just so blessed that we get to do what we did. But we are not traveling. We're going as far as the place in New Hampshire, and that's it.
Well, you'll be able to travel a year from now.
You think so?
Yeah.
Yeah. That, I listened to all the doctors at work talking about the vaccine and stuff. And they're thinking, everybody will be vaccinated by next spring. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think things will be clear 6 months from now, but I don't think things will be cleared up enough for kind of normal freedoms until a year from now.
Yeah. Well, in this vaccine, from what I hear, and jump in if anybody's heard anything different, this is just for adults 18 and over. They haven't addressed this with the pediatric population yet.
Yeah, I know, but I don't know if you saw the feature article in the Globe yesterday. It was almost a Pulitzer level article. Pretty phenomenal. They must have called on their stat reporters, but this is a revolutionary mRNA. They had to substitute a chemical in the mRNA that caused rejection before, and it wasn't either of the drug companies. It was one of the fundamental scientists in Europe, or a couple of them. And once they did that, this became a ubiquitous tool with just ridiculous ability.
Oh. Yeah, I'll have to look up the so who wrote the article?
Well, it was a series of co-authors in the Globe yesterday.
Okay.
If anybody wants it, I put it into a PDF.
Oh, yeah.
It's got a lot of pictures, so it's still 4 megabytes as a PDF, but it's really a remarkable story.
Wow.
Oh, pardon me for interrupting, but I just realized that Barry is on the phone with us. Hi, Barry. I'm going to allow you to talk and change your name in Zoom so we know that it's you. Phone number ending in 7495. I recognize as Barry M. Steinberg. Welcome, Barry.
Oh, thank you.
We can hear you great. That's excellent.
Oh, very good. Thank you.
And Brian and Craig, I'm going to add you as co-host as well. So we have the entire executive committee covering just in case. Just before 5 o'clock, Len and Wig and I reviewed what we're going to do at 6 when I switch over. I'm going to leave this rock meeting at 6 o'clock and go over and again participate. Well, maybe just view, participate if it's relevant to in the MBTA's Forging Ahead presentation, which this time tonight is on the North Shore region where I live, so I feel obligated to attend that. And if the meeting format allows it, I rename myself to Stefan Wunsch, MBTA Rider Oversight Committee, but of course I don't act on behalf of the ROC or speak on behalf, but I do identify myself as a member of the ROC. That's just for the record. I didn't interrupt the conversation that was just happening, did I?
Oh, that's okay. I just want to say one more thing. I mean, I don't want to dwell on this, but I think you guys all know, but the next 2 months are going to be devastating.
Absolutely.
Maybe 3, but at least 2.
With regards to what? What do you mean?
Well,
Ridership or?
a lot of states are going to have 0 hospital rooms and 0 ICU rooms. I mean,
I feel that we need a soundtrack to this, a really brooding soundtrack. You know, I agree.
Well, we need some cheerfulness too. I mean, we need people to try to stay a little bit.
Was a sprinkling of bright violins, you know. Well, good to see you, Bonnie.
Good to be here.
Yeah.
I am hoping the holiday decorations will be cheerful. I found gardens just remarkable this past season.
So I email a calendar out, folks, or a file that has the putative calendar for next year.
Oh, thanks, Lynn.
And I mean, while we're waiting, the only thing I'll point out is that the schedule for December is pulled up a week. So that normally the meeting would be on the 4th Tuesday of the month, which is the 28th. And we tried to avoid scheduling things between Christmas and New Year's, so I pulled everything up by week.
Right.
And
good. Oh, by the way, folks, just a meeting technicality. I have not been able to yet figure out what changed on YouTube that makes it so that the scheduled stream is not connected with the stream that's being sent by Zoom right now to YouTube. So I have a funny feeling it might prevent people from finding the stream on YouTube that's actually live in order to participate. I'm going to try to work that out before next month. I hope we don't miss anybody who would normally be watching on YouTube and then interacting by the YouTube chat that way. But I think that is a risk. I won't bore you with the gory details, but we are on YouTube live. I just don't think that it's the stream that you get to find if you go to the ROC website and hit the live stream button. I think it's another stream in my channel. I don't think I can fix that right now without wasting a lot of time, though. So we'll just forge ahead.
So to speak.
Yep. All right. I think we're ready to call things to order. Oh, we're about 2.5 minutes behind already. Any objections to us officially kicking this off, although we have been recording and streaming already for a while?
Go for it.
Cool. Welcome to the November 24th, 2020 Rider Oversight Committee public meeting. I have shared my screen showing the agenda on the left and all of you folks on the right. This allows folks like Amy and Brian and Craig, who don't want to have a camera on, which is completely fine, to still be represented in the boxes on the screen. And also folks like Barry Steinberg, who are attendees, although not part of the committee. Barry also shows up in the box on the screen. That's just to allow it to be on record that we had all of us. I will start off by asking, does anyone here would like to make a public comment? Barry, anything you want to add right now? You'll have a chance at the end, of course, like usual.
All I can say is, since I have not been on the tee for months now, it's very difficult for me to make any decisions as to what kind of service they're running. So I purposely have not been making any comments, even though I had feelings about it. But I can't tell the T to run empty vehicles.
Understood.
That's as far as I'm taking it at this time.
Yep, I'll just make the comment that I'm also going on however many months. I haven't been on an MBTA service or even an MBTA property since March, but I'm doing my best to follow the news, the actions of the board, and keep in touch with a select set of folks from various agencies that I was friendly with by just by my regular commute. It's been tough, but we're all doing what we can.
I may be the only person who's been on the tee from this group.
Wig, I've been on the tee too. Just want to make it known.
Oh, good. Okay,
Oh, good.
Craig.
Excellent.
Yeah, I've been on the commuter rail too.
Yeah, I've been on most of the services, not a lot, but most of them. I think the T has done a pretty good job. It's more the riders that occasionally don't do such a good job than the T itself, in my experience. I also think, at least speaking just for Somerville, that the bus adjustments look fairly logical here. I feel bad about the 80, which is going to be cut back, which goes right through the environmental justice community in Somerville, but it does not have much ridership. And so if they're trying to kind of adjust down a little bit with regard to spending and also pay attention to ridership, the decisions they appear to be making here seem logical to me.
Yeah, well, we'll get to discuss all of that with Laurel when she comes. And so I'm going to suggest that we barrel through the subcommittee meetings just in case we want to run long with Laurel.
Yeah, sounds good. Who would like to go first? I'm pulling up the notes from our subcommittee. Any preference?
Stefan, I can start. You've got CIF listed first, so.
Oh yeah, good point. Go ahead, please. Thank you.
It doesn't always need to be that way, but I guess I figure I'll start as usual. And let me pull up our agenda so I have it on the side. So we talked about a few different things this month. As usual, we reviewed FMCB meeting highlights. Some of the highlights this month were, one was an analysis of the ride. I think there was a pilot program to have on-demand rides available to ridership at a essentially what turned out to be a lower subsidy cost from the MBTA, resulting in higher ridership and essentially kind of more or less flat total cost of the ride, but many more rides provided with the on-demand model, which I think is essentially Uber and Lyft. So that was encouraging. I think we're going to continue to focus on in future meetings. I know Len had mentioned he's been interested in that and following that along. So that was an interesting development. And then obviously the big development has been the Forging Ahead presentations that we did talk about a bit at the CAF. I imagine that was also a topic of conversation at the operations subcommittee. So I think from a finance perspective, what we acknowledged essentially, the MBTA either needs more revenue or they need to cut service. And in all likelihood, it's going to be a combination of both when all is said and done. So obviously the MBTA is limited as to the revenues that they can raise directly. They need support from the State House, the legislature, which I think I don't know if we discussed this, but I definitely support bringing more revenue in. But the cuts are on the table. And I think Wade kind of hinted at this a little bit in the opening remarks, but what we saw on what was proposed, at least, is that the cuts mirrored essentially the ridership pattern over the last couple of months, which is that the bus ridership has been strongest, most resilient, with commuter rail ridership being the least resilient. So it seemed like the cuts that were proposed were heaviest on commuter rail and lightest on bus. So directionally that makes sense, but it does seem like there's going to be some disruption. So I think from that perspective, the comment period is open until December 4th. So I don't know if we can take it up in old business, new business. If we want to try to make a statement, I don't think that we had anything coming out of the CIF subcommittee that we wanted to put forth, but did want to make sure everybody is aware of that comment period if they do want to comment personally on it. Then the other thing that we talked about, one more thing on that. So, the service cuts are one thing, but I think a general concern would be being able to ramp back up service. So are we kind of kneecapping the T? So if we cut service today, and as WIG, I think Bonnie, we're talking about, 6 months to a year, we're back to normal. Are we not able to ramp back up quickly, not able to get the employees in to train, not able to get the financial resources and everything like that, service is permanently impaired. There's mode shift going on at that point. So that is the concern as well, coming out of everything that's going on. So also something to kind of keep in mind there. And then the other big focus for this month's meeting was on the capital plan for the MBTA. So they've also done a bit of discussion on what the plan is for this year, which is essentially a small cutback in the capital plan, targeted again towards the what I saw was commuter rail and more or less non-essential projects, with some acceleration of some bus projects and bus lane deployment, other things that might be a little bit easier to do with lower service levels and things like that. So I think it was overall somewhere between a 2 and 5% reduction in capital spending, but essentially the T has paused their 5-year CIP plan because they're waiting to see what happens. So that cycle has been disrupted a little bit, and it could be some time until the T is comfortable really projecting out multi-years. So we definitely talked about the possibility of many one-year projections, at least for the next year or two, until things return to a more normal state and the T is better able to forecast future ridership needs. But the current year, and I think the kind of immediate term plan, is to continue funding the major projects. So the Green Line extension, the Red and Orange Line cars, South Coast Rail, things like that are already in progress. The plan appears to be to continue to fund those through to completion. But things that are still on the horizon, such as the rail transformation project and the bus transformation project, those may be at risk of receiving funding at this point going forward. So some concern there. And then the other thing that we talked a little bit about was that the current plan, again, this is I think a plan at this point, but I'd assume it's likely going to happen, is that the MBTA is planning to essentially borrow or take, whatever you want to call it, funds from the capital budget to fund current operations. I think everybody can remember a few years ago, before the FMCB, this was more or less common practice. There was a pretty sturdy wall that went between capital and operating a couple of years ago. And I think for the most part, that helped to wall off some of those capital funds and make sure that they actually went to capital projects to maintain a better state of good repair than we had in the past. So I think that was crucial to some of the progress that has been made over the last couple of years. So I am concerned that this kind of reopening of that wall between the two could lead to breakdowns in the future, but the FMCB seems to realize that that is something that they are actively trying to avoid, that it's a emergency stopgap measure. So again, hopefully it is a short-term thing, but again, something to keep an eye on going forward. So that was our discussion for this month for November, and then for next month we are hopefully going to review the audited financial statements that should come out. They usually come out in November, obviously may be delayed with COVID, for the fiscal year ended in June, to see what the statements there have to say and any indications one way or the other. And then we also want to get means tested fares back on the agenda. We've talked about that a bit in the past, and it's kind of been a topic of interest. So wanted to kind of get back into that in December. So that was our November meeting that I recall. Len, anything that you want to add or mention?
Oh, excuse me. That's fine, Brian. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Any questions from the group?
This is Wig. I want to add two small things. One I've added before, and I won't belabor it. The first thing is that some of you may be aware that Massport had some drastic cuts in the past week as well, which they finally pulled the trigger on. So there's been a lot of layoffs and a lot of cutback on capital budget. They're obviously busier than might be safe this weekend, and the same may happen over Christmas. But they really bit the bullet. There's some big changes in that budget. And I hadn't heard of those before the last week or so. The second thing I just want to remind people that I brought this up before, don't need to discuss it, but new federal administration, Kerry in charge of climate has almost the top secretarial position in the new cabinet. Climate generally goes directly to transportation, capital investment. And so I want to make sure that we check in from time to time to the folks at the state and at the MPO who are tracking those federal changes and in focal point and tracking Massachusetts opportunities to participate in those new capital infusions that are going to come with that federal investment opportunity. And I presume that in this region, at least, that will be tied to the new equity analysis that the MPO is undertaking.
Thanks, Wig.
By the way, I should mention, I was a little late in doing it, but I did pull up your agenda from that subcommittee on the screen, in case it helps.
Thank you. Any other questions? Nope. Stefan, I think that's the update from the CIF.
Thank you very much. I will pull my notes from the Marketing Communications Operations Subcommittee up into view. These are just my notes verbatim. Let's see if I can make that a little bit bigger. How's that for font size? Is that tolerable for everybody?
Yep.
Okay. Having them on the screen, and if everyone can read them, I'm not sure if it's worth going down other than calling out the big highlights. I think were talking about the enforcement of mask wearing requirement and how that is any more or less easy than enforcing proof of payment fare evasion. Since Laurel has just connected, let me just pause what I was saying in order to welcome her. Laurel, thank you for joining us. Let me make sure that, yeah, Laurel, you can unmute if you want to. If you're pressed for time, Laurel, we could switch over to start talking with you about stuff, or we can continue on until the scheduled 5:45. Any preference?
Finish up what you're doing.
Okay. I won't linger though. Okay, so in the subcommittee, I think the biggest topic again was the enforcement of mask wearing. A lot of what we talked about in the subcommittee about ride, a lot of questions came up. For example, I asked, I don't think we have the answer yet. This might come up under what Laurel can tell us about the forging ahead plans. What exactly the benefit is of going from 30 to 40 minutes. Also, I'm not seeing anything in my own notes that rises to the level of actually calling out. Does anybody have any questions? I don't want to force you to read my own notes, but.
Yeah, I have a question if you don't mind. So what was said, I've taken the commuter rail couple times a month since March, but one of my girlfriends is a nurse and she takes the Franklin line, so she's on it the whole, full time. She's a nurse at the Brigham. And she's been telling me that she switches cars. There's not, the ridership, as we know, is down like 80 or 90% on the commuter rail. But she was telling me she has to switch cars because there's people in certain cars that, everybody gets territorial and sit in the same areas, but there's the same people that refuse to wear masks. And she said that the conductors never say anything. Now it's on the overhead announcements that say, passengers over 2 years or whatever, because I've heard it, the few times a month that I take the train. But like, what's going on with enforcement? Is there any enforcement at all? What's the policy?
I believe the policy is that transit police will write a ticket for a $300 fine for a lack of mask wearing after a first request to do so by the operator. So I believe it's if someone's not wearing a mask, an MBTA employee or vehicle operator will ask them to do so. And if they don't comply, then the operator or the MBTA employee has the option of calling transit police. And I believe that extends to even stopping the vehicle in the case of a bus if a bus operator does not wish to continue on that trip. Again, that's my understanding. I may be slightly incorrect on that, but that's the best of my knowledge. Anyone want to add?
Rick's shaking his head no.
Yeah, my experience has been exactly as your friend relayed, that 2 times ago, because I used commuter rail to get to Lynn and to get to Swampscott. Now I'm going against the grain, so it's even probably less populated than the nurse. But one time I was going up to Lynn, and 2 young people, perfectly healthy, got on, no mask. Nobody said anything to them at all.
Really?
It was clear there was no visible reason that they should not have had a mask.
But I think
Interesting.
this fine policy just went into place recently, like within the last couple of weeks or so. So that episode that you recall, Wig, I mean, you've
Yeah.
told us that one, for more than a month now.
Yes, you're right.
I'm asking you, Bonnie, though, have you talked to Linda Dillon about this on the commuter rail?
No.
Okay, all right. I'll ask her about it. Because
Yeah.
I don't know to what extent the policy for the MBTA also applies to Keolis. You would think it would. The
Yeah.
assumption is that it would. But I'll ask Bonnie. I'll ask Linda. Linda was supposed to come to this meeting, but she just asked if she could come to the January meeting.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So,
I do, every time I take the train, I do text Linda and tell her I'm on board and tell her what's going on.
yeah.
When I took it, not last week, the week before, I get on at Forge Park at the beginning. I was one of 6 people. I took it all the way to Back Bay. There was 6 of us in that entire car on the way in. On the way home, there was 4 of us.
Right. Yeah, I hear you.
Those days, remember the days of me screaming and hollering, it was standing room only.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll ask Linda about that, and then most likely what she'll say is just have your friend. Well, I mean, your friend's probably riding the same train.
Yeah.
And so we can. Can you just tell me what time it is, and then I can tell her
So
that
what I'm going to do, I'll email her right now, or actually I can text her right now. She's probably on the train right now.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get a real live update. Yeah.
Well, I was talking about. Tell me what train your friend is on in the mornings.
I will. I'll let you know.
I can relay it to Linda.
Okay.
So, all right, cool.
And
Thanks.
also, I was thinking of doing this anyway, but since we're talking about it now, unless anyone objects, I'll email Deputy Superintendent Preston Horton of the Transit Police, who we had on as our special guest. I believe it was 2 or 3 months ago, since his division is the Patrol Operations Division and in charge of giving out the fines for fare evasion and now presumably for non-compliance of face coverings. So again, unless anyone objects, I'll email Deputy Chief Horton and ask if he'd be willing to talk to us again, or if he's unable to in a time that it coincides with our meetings, maybe I'll just talk to him on the phone and get his take on this new enforcement.
Can I ask what is the question?
Oh, the question was what the transit police are able to do realistically for enforcing the mask wearing ban and or writing the $300 fines for noncompliance. Like, in other words, does it actually is it actually happening? Is it realistic to expect the transit police to do so? I think. Am I asking that question correctly to the rest of the committee?
Yeah.
I would hold off on contacting him, at least right now. I mean, it's kind of one of these like pop into our heads ideas. I mean, so let's think it through a bit more. I mean, because the policy just, I think, went into place. I think I would need to like formulate my question better at this point. You may be faster at the formulation thing, but if you're asking me whether or not to go ahead with it now, I would say not right now. We can maybe decide between meetings. I mean, but you're asking me. I'm not telling you not to.
Oh, I'll take that advice. There's no rush. I mean, certainly with holidays coming up, people's availability may be lower. So
to Len's point, the last time or two I've been on commuter rail, the people were wearing masks, and I would certainly recommend that the conductors just speak politely to people and not whip out the $300 fine as a first tactic.
I'm going to respectfully disagree with Len on this one. We're at the height of the global pandemic right now. To wait a couple months to formulate our answers seems a little silly. Stefan, I trust you to write a reasonable email to him, just asking, how is mask given the new change in $300 fine, has your team been involved in enforcing it all? Do you have any statistics you can share, or any just broad feedback that anything that you'd like to share with us. Keep it open and broad. I don't think it hurts to poke at it.
I appreciate that, Craig. Thank you.
And I'm fine with that,
Len,
Craig.
does that- does that sway
I
you?
wasn't suggesting a couple of months. I was just saying, let's have a well-formulated question. That's a better formulated question than what I was hearing earlier. So I'm fine with that, Craig.
Okay. I don't think that we have a guest at the moment planned for the December Operations Communications Subcommittee. Is if Deputy Chief Horton is available, even for a few minutes to call in, is that of interest for folks?
Well, I think it might be, but to Craig's point, I think getting in touch quickly and civilly so that any corrective action that needs to be done is done right away is important.
Sounds good. I'll fire off the email as soon as we're done with the meeting.
And I guess to that point too, you can also ask what extent they control what, or they patrol, for lack of a better word, what goes on the commuter rail, and because this came up in the context of the commuter rail, and I'm just not sure to what extent they are also monitoring the commuter rail. So I'm most interested in that question.
Yeah, very good. I know from prior experience and from having quite a few friends who are commuter rail conductors that they are more often calling in local municipalities, police forces to deal with a unruly passenger or fare evasion, bad behavior, that kind of thing. For example, if you're on a train and you're out in the middle of Andover, your response from transit police is going to be much slower than the Andover police. But whether that translates into Andover police being able to write a fine for non-compliance of an MBTA rule, that's an open-ended question, I think.
Sure.
And not open-ended. Oh, it's an open question.
Just to clarify, it's not an MBTA rule. It's the governor's executive order.
Oh, thank you for that point. Yes, absolutely right. Thank you.
So, just to throw another idea in here, there's so few people on commuter rail. If they could have a small stash of masks and just politely have a couple to hand out if people don't get on board with the mask, until somebody is unruly, I think the conductor's attitude should be that they can politely ask for behavior to be a little better.
So unless anyone else wants to ask any more questions or make any more comments from the subcommittee, I think we can leave it at that. Folks who were there, I hope I'm not overlooking any major discussions that we had during the subcommittee, but I'm happy to end that subcommittee presentation now.
Yeah, well, I just want to say to Craig, I hope it isn't the jacket that's making you respectfully disagree with me. It's okay to disrespectfully disagree with me, okay?
I'm going to turn my camera off so you don't see me cracking up laughing at you.
That was very good, Len. Thank you. Okay, let me pull back up the full agenda. Unless we've got anything else to mention from any subcommittee, let me officially acknowledge and welcome Laurel Paget-Seekins. Laurel, I don't remember if you've been with us since we started. No, you haven't been with us since we started doing Zoom. Have you joined us since we've even been doing the live YouTube streams? If not, do you want to introduce yourself and like?
Yes, I believe I did, but okay. It was a very long time ago.
Do you want to take a minute or two and introduce yourself and like give us your background and what you're currently doing? It's up to you.
Sure, I'll do that quickly. My name is Laurel Paget-Seekins. I'm the Assistant General Manager for Policy at the MBTA. Been at the MBTA for 6 years, and I do work on sort of customer-facing policies around fares and service, and am sort of coordinating some of our COVID response and Forging Ahead initiative.
Thank you. I just noticed that Brian Kane is also joining us. Brian, I've allowed you to speak, so if you want to just to say hi, it's a pleasure to have you.
Hi, I cannot see Laurel's presentations enough.
I feel like Brian is stalking me at this point.
Thought he was stalking me.
I will have to leave at 6 to go see the North Shore public meeting, but I wanted to join you folks this evening to say hello and show my support and thank you for what you're doing. And Laurel, keep it up. You're almost there.
Were you on last night's meeting?
I was indeed. All 415 participants.
I think we broke 500 unique viewers.
Well done.
And pardon me also to just mention, Karen, I apologize, I didn't see you had connected earlier. Karen Websick, one of the Right Oversight Committee members, is also calling in by phone. I'm renaming you Karen. Do you want to just say hi and make sure that your audio is working in case you want to ask questions later?
No, hi, and you don't have to apologize. I just joined a couple of minutes ago.
Okay, excellent. And we can hear you just great. Okay, turning back to Laurel. And again, Brian, thank you for joining us. Laurel, I don't know if you wanted to give us an overview of where we are right now or just dive right into questions. I will just open it up to whoever would like to start off in whatever way.
I guess the question is, yeah, like, do you folks want to see the abbreviated version of the Forging Ahead presentation, or has everyone already seen it 5 to 15 times?
Anyone at all?
Well, I'd be happy to see it, but I don't want to be the only one. So,
well, no, if anyone hasn't seen it, then you should see the abbreviated version. I mean, I've seen it a few times, but I'm fine with seeing it again. But if anyone hasn't seen it, then by all means, let's see it. And
all right, I'll hit the highlights then.
Yep. And do you actually want to share your screen, Laurel? Because I will stop sharing and turn it over to you if you want.
Sure.
All right.
Do that.
Go right ahead.
Oh, did that work?
Yep, looks good. I can see it. Everybody else seeing it okay?
You can see the PowerPoint?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
All right, let me try to make it so that you can see. But I'm going to do this so I can skip ahead to the salient points.
That looks good.
Okay. Yeah, so Forging Ahead is what we're calling this three-pronged initiative to address the current crisis that we're in and to focus on resources on our essential services. And so the first part is addressing internal spending efficiencies, and I'm not going to talk about that in particular, but that's the first order of business. The second was an assessment of our capital program and to allocate a limited amount of funds from capital to our operating budget. And I can answer a few questions about that. There's definitely more presentations on our website about that if people want to check those out. So what I was planning on presenting on was mostly this third part, which is the the service proposals. Quick note, y'all are, I'm sure, aware that this is a national problem, and so the MBTA is not alone in facing significant budget shortfalls due to revenue losses from COVID-19. Quick overview of our operating budget. So for total operating expenses, roughly $1.7 million a year to operate the system. Sorry, $1.7 billion a year to operate the system. And you can see sort of how it's broken out here by categories. So within sort of our three prongs, we're trying to figure out how to close the gap. So we're continuing to sort of iterate on the projections. So the sort of worst case scenario projection that we have for FY22 is a budget gap of a little north of $500 million out of our $1.7 billion for operating. And so the bulk of the proposal is the one-time shift from capital, and then looking at savings from service and the internal cost savings to make up the rest for FY22. And this approach is doing a 2-year budget, so any savings we can sort of husband in FY21, we will then apply to FY22 to help with the FY22 gap. So part of our approach is to try to save some money now to help us out next year. Slide I'm sure everyone has seen about our ridership sort of and drop off and then recovery, and the most salient point being that it has not been equal across all of our modes, and then even within bus, for example, hasn't been equal across all of the routes. But roughly right now, a little over 300,000 trips a day, and we have tailed off. We're actually sort of seeing a flattening out over the last few weeks. So this just only goes to this chart just goes to November, but even throughout November, we've seen a flattening out of ridership, presumably due to the increasing COVID caseload. And for the first time in October, our fare revenue came in below our sort of budgeted projection. So we're using scenario planning to try to plan for the future. So we have 3 scenarios that we worked with MassDOT and CTPS on. These are looking at factors around economy, travel pattern changes, and vaccine. And we projected those out by mode so that we can think about capacity we will need at the mode level, and also fare revenue projections. I think one other note is that we have been really thinking about this whole process, keeping in mind our planning process for the bus transformation and the rail transformation, so that we are trying to, in whatever we do, we are sort of keeping that foundation in mind to build back off of. So very much trying to plan for the future as we address the current crisis. So yeah, well, this is obviously an iterative process. You all know that we do service planning 4 times a year in bus and subway, and twice a year in commuter rail and ferry. So we will continue to do that, and changes will be implemented based on those schedules. So the framework for essential services, we used a framework where we were able to sort of normalize across all of our modes and routes to compare them to each other in this 2x2, where we're looking at transit critical, meaning serving populations, low income, people of color, 0 to low vehicle households. And we did another layer of seniors and people with disabilities, more at the route level, not at the sort of mode level. And then where we are seeing high ridership, where we had high ridership pre-COVID, where we expect ridership to come back. And then the services that fall in this upper quadrant are what we're defining as essential service that we're trying to preserve at or above the service delivery policy. The goal being that we do not want to degrade service everywhere. And so the service falling in the 4 other boxes face potentially bigger changes that would fall below the service delivery policy. Our timeline is we presented on the 9th. We're doing public outreach now. It looks like the board vote will actually be December 14th now. We'll do 2 touches with the board. So go on the 7th and then give them, some feedback of what we've heard, and then we'll modify for whatever feedback they have for us to come back on the 14th. And that the implementation would depend on the mode again. So some changes take place sooner than others, and some of this depends on where we think there's less capacity needed during the pandemic, and some of it has to do with sort of how our implementation timelines. So just terminology wise, essential service is what we're calling the services that are in sort of this top box of our quadrant. Our base service proposal is the essential services plus a reduced level of service for the routes that fall outside of that box, which essentially means that all rapid transit, the Fairmont line, 80 of our bus routes, and the ride will fall into this sort of essential service box, and will maintain at the service delivery policy levels. and then we're proposing a reduced level of service on the other commuter rail lines and and bus routes, and then a suspension of the ferry service. Under this proposal, most of our service is preserved, both in terms of service hours. So 85% of our bus service hours, 70% of our rapid transit service hours, 65% of our commuter rail hours, and also in terms of where people are currently traveling. So 82% of our weekday trips are currently taking place on the services we have defined as essential, and that 3% of our current workday trips would have faced some sort of span elimination or have to divert to a different mode. And then our coverage of our service area shrinks a little bit, from 82% of households in the MBTA service area being within a half mile of the MBTA to 78.5%. So next I have all of this by mode. So quickly, this is what the commuter rail ridership looks like right now, about 13% of our pre-COVID ridership. The peak's down significantly. And then at a glance, our changes are ending commuter rail service at 9 and on the weekends, and essentially running 85% of our weekday service. But the exact schedules will depend on, well, we haven't set those yet, will depend on sort of our best information about ridership across the lines and throughout the time of day. And to close 6 out of 141 of our stops. We're proposing to suspend the ferry service. This is our current ferry ridership was around 12%. And then we believe that most ferry riders have alternatives, either the 93 bus for the Charlestown ferry or the Greenbush line for Hingham and Hull ferry riders. On rapid transit, approximately 24% of our pre-COVID ridership, the blue line significantly higher than the other lines, as would be expected. Rapid transit, we're proposing to stop service at midnight, but no changes to the start of service time since we still see strong ridership in the mornings, and reduce frequency, roughly 20% across all the lines. It'll depend on ridership, and again, within the service delivery policy standards. Also depend on, crowding guidelines, and we will proposing to stop the E line at Brigham Circle, with the alternative being the 39 bus. Bus ridership, 41% of our pre-COVID ridership, the highest, like I mentioned. Some routes significantly higher. We're currently running more bus service on some routes than we did pre-COVID in order to address social distancing on those routes. Our changes are like rail to stop service after midnight. And then we are proposing that amongst the bus routes that show up as essential, we would keep them within the service delivery policy standards. It will vary depending on the route, what the frequency changes would be, and based on the ridership. On the non-essential bus routes that we would consider larger frequency changes. And then of our 169 bus routes, we're proposing to consolidate 14, shorten 5, and eliminate 25. And these are for different reasons. Some of these are very close to other bus or rapid transit service. Some of them have very low ridership, and some of them have sort of other alternatives close by. We're proposing to eliminate the suburban subsidy program, which has very low ridership. This obviously impacts the ride. About 1.1% of pre-COVID ride trips would shift from ADA fares to premium fares under this proposal. And obviously we would continue to monitor for crowding and continue to do quarterly service changes. So this is the list of essential bus routes. The key bus routes are in gray on this chart, but this is the service delivery policy if you don't have it memorized already, in terms of hours of operation and frequency. I think another thing to note is that we are trying to plan for the future. Should additional revenue materialize, whether ridership comes back faster or other sources, and so we're asking for public feedback on sort of how to prioritize adding back these different packages so that we can sort of be flexible and nimble in our response. So we're getting feedback on this. Basically, the choices are adding frequency, adding span, restoring ferry service, and then sort of starting to think about where there are potentially new services we need to think about as since travel patterns potentially have changed throughout the pandemic. So we have kind of an estimate of the costs to add those back and the impacts of them. So that is the quick version. We're doing public comment now. We have an interactive map. We have a public comment period, and we have a bunch of meetings, which there's one for the North Shore tonight. Starts in 8 minutes, and then we have 3 more next week. So
for me, for jumping right in, because as Brian Kane also mentioned, and as you just said, yeah, the Region 7 North Shore is tonight. I'm going to be switching over to that at 6 o'clock. So if anyone, unless no one really objects, I'm going to ask a very first quick question to kick things off. Any objections to that? Okay, cool. Thank you. I've attended all of the public meetings so far from the very beginning until last night as well. And out of all of them, I think the most interesting question, which has, I don't want to say the most troubling answer, but the one that's the most bothersome to me personally is the issue of how do you gauge ridership returning on a service like ferry, which has been completely shut down, or on a route that's been eliminated, or a route that, or like weekend service and commuter rail, which is being stopped. I believe it was said, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Laura, I'll just speak a second. It sounded like it was going to be judged by inference from other services and by return to work and other outside MBTA metrics. But Laurel, could you comment on that specifically before I better jump off in 6 minutes?
Yeah, I think those are actually 3 different things. So for the ferry, I think that we do have some good proxies, right? So we can understand the ridership on the Greenbush line or the 93 bus in the case of Charlestown, and we can understand the traffic on the alternative driving ways, and we can also, we do have our customer survey still going on, our employer, we have a new employer survey, so to understand sort of how employers are making decisions. And then of course we will be continuing to do community feedback. So on the ferry one, because there are, I think, pretty close proxies, I would say that we'll have a sense of when demand is coming back. The bus routes, I think that plays into our bus network redesign. So as part of the bus network redesign, we are looking at overall travel demand data to see where we need prioritize bus service and how to structure the network. And so that gives us an opportunity to think about how to serve those communities that maybe don't have good bus ridership now, or previous to COVID didn't have good bus ridership, but had to do with our network serving that didn't serve the community the right way. So I think we'll have an opportunity to review all of the bus routes, even those that have been suspended as part of the bus network redesign. So I think that's an opportunity to look at, see what the issues might be there in terms of demand. And we're, for the bus network redesign, we're using general travel demand data, not on the MBTA. So it doesn't matter that there isn't ridership data. For the weekend commuter rail service, I think that is where it's a little more complicated because there's different types of trips that happen on the weekend commuter rail. You have both work trips, and then you also have sort of more recreational trips. And so I think we're going to have to both think about what is the potential. So what are the sort of jobs that are driving those trips, as well as the recreational, and thinking about how the economy reopens, and when that demand will come back. So I think it's a little bit, we're going to have to be sort of use whatever data we have for each of the decisions. There might not it just might not be the exact same data in each of the cases, I guess that's the point.
I just want to point out that Brian Kane has his hands raised.
Oh, thank you very much, Len. I didn't see that. Brian, please.
Stefan, I wanted to salute you for also attending every one of these meetings. I've definitely seen you there. I'm not sure that this is a club either of us want to be in. I did want to note,
Thank you.
to answer your question, the advisory board plans to call, and I've already told Steve Poftak this, we're going to call for the creation of what we're calling the Return to Service Commission. We think we need an independent body that will work with the T and with regional organizations, regional planning authorities, RTAs, business community, the Boston Chamber, that will help the T and the control board and their successors determine when services should come back and when. The T's trust level is not high, as we know, and it is my belief that an independent organization or an independent body is needed for this. So I just wanted to let you know, and I would hopefully, ask for the support of The Rock with this, and who knows what the control board will do, but this is something we will be calling for very soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I guess I'll just follow up one thing on this with Laurel and you, Brian. Is there possibly an avenue of surveying via the municipalities that has not been done before? Or, in other words, can the MBTA ask for and enlist the help of municipalities to get surveys out to potential riders in a way that's never been done before? I'm sort of asking a question without having an answer in mind. I mean, I'm just wondering how far outside of the box is that data collection and surveying for return to service going?
Yeah, I guess that there's two ways that I'm thinking about that. One is where people are making it another way, it'll show up in our travel demand data, right? It's where people are not making trips because there is no transit, so they're not traveling at all, that comes from surveying. So that is the use of surveying, right? I think that so that's ways that I think we're going to have to try to be creative about how to hear from people to understand what trips aren't being made at all. I think the other part of this, which is very difficult, is that our ridership, our revenue is lagging our ridership, and so part of what we need to return service obviously is revenue, because that's the reason why we're cutting it. It's partially because there's not as much demand right now, but partially because of the revenue. And so right now our fare revenue is lagging ridership because we have much higher bus ridership and much lower commuter rail ridership right now. So the average fare across the system has gone down fairly significantly. So that is another factor in sort of how we're going to have to think about return, is also when we'll have a sustainable source of revenue for service to return.
So I can't raise my hand. And I just want to say, Brian, I support the creation of an independent commission to help determine when things open, but it's not due to a lack of trust in my part in the MBTA. And I'm not saying that you have that lack of trust either. I know that you're saying the perception is such. I very much feel that that perception is unwarranted. And having worked with people like Laurel for many years and people at CTPS, I know that they're very data driven, and that if there's any group of people that really hate cutting back on service, it's the people that work at the MBTA. To the extent that cutbacks ever happen, is because there's just not the funds to support it, and they are done as a last ditch effort in order to maintain the balanced budget that the MBTA has to maintain. But the other reason I support is that any chance that I have a crack at the data, I'll take. So I have some questions, but I've said enough already, so I want to stop and let other people say things before I'm asking more questions.
I'm just going to really quick just say I'm going to make the co-host role elevated for Len to the actual host, because I'm going to switch over now. Thank you very much, Brian, and Laurel, for joining us. And the YouTube stream should continue until the end. Len, I guess when you're all done, just simply stop the session, and thank you again.
Thanks, Stefan. Stay firm. Well, I'll expect a review of all these meetings from you at some point.
Oh, and by the way, you can text me if you have any Zoom issues and you want me to jump back on. Just send me a text. I think everyone has my phone number. I'm not going to give it out on YouTube, though.
All right.
Thanks again, everybody.
Stefan, thank you. And thank you, Brian.
Thanks.
So, so if you're a co-host, I mean, that would be Wig and Craig. I mean, I guess, yeah, a lot of people here are co-hosts. I mean, so if you're co-host, you can't raise your hands. So you just have
You can
to
do
jump
it.
in.
I just saw someone raise their hand physically, just not in the.
Oh, okay,
thing,
and
right?
I'm not looking. So thank you, Laura. Maybe since you're looking at everyone, you can, and we're talking to you. You control the meeting, all right? You're used to doing that.
Yeah, that Rig raising his hand. So
Yeah, I've got a couple questions about the intersection of service and environmental justice and COVID. So first, I'm assuming that you're paying more attention to the ridership on the Blue Line, that the adjustments are representative of ridership.
Yeah.
Okay. Secondly, I'm wondering, this is really operations, but there's also some knowledge that's required to understand how to keep exposures within the vehicles lower. And I'm wondering about who you might rely on for expertise in that. I think, as I said before, that many of the adjustments that T has made have been phenomenal, from the, automated hand washing and water and everything at North Station to the adjustments on the buses. But a couple things come to mind. We talked about masks earlier, so I won't go into that on the T again. But one is just air circulation, and I know people have studied the circulation. I was very impressed by the head of operations at the transit in New York City and all they did to focus on air changes early on. But the buses I've been on, even the little top flip windows are sealed tight. And I'm wondering if that's the smartest thing with regard to air circulation and who you may be interfacing with when you consider the percent of people, the infection rates in various communities, and the need for circulation at the same time as you're providing transit. Can you speak to that at all?
I can't. I know that some of our departments have, but it's definitely outside of my expertise.
Okay, well, I'll try to bring that up at our next operations meeting. My gut level sense is that the people who understand operations and engineering aren't necessarily the people who understand exposure science from a medical point of view. So that's really my concern. And the second one you probably can't speak to either, given your answer. But some of these, I'm really concerned with the communities from Chelsea to Lynn. They have a dominant amount of the COVID deaths in the metropolitan area. They have a dominant reliance on transit, although there are some other neighborhoods that have as much reliance on transit, but that whole band has a dominant reliance on transit. And one of the two last times I was in downtown Lynn, virtually nobody had a mask on. There were tons of people walking around, all different ages, virtually no one with a mask on. And that's gonna affect the people who get on your services with that population. And so I'm wondering about interface, not just with the people in operations at the T, but how the T is interfacing with the people who have governance over those populations and may be able to work together with you on that.
So I don't know about Lynn in particular, but we are very much in close coordination with the sort of state coordinating, I don't know if it's called a committee, whatever it is, in terms of sharing information, sharing resources, getting information out to people. So we do have a lot of sort of regular communication with the rest of the sort of departments around Massachusetts that are responding to COVID in all of the different ways.
Okay.
So
well, let me just say one more thing about that. Do you have any sense of whether they're surveilling these issues? I mean, my experience is that the people who are in positions of responsibility in government, including now with this pandemic, do not necessarily have the same lifestyles as the people who I'm concerned about with regard to the issues I've just brought up. And I see it with the federal politicians on TV. You know, the ones who are blue always have masks, but they don't always fit. Some of them are slipping right off their face as if they didn't really pay attention to the fit of the mask, and that it's not as much a part of their normal day as it is for some other people.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you're asking. I'm sorry.
Well, what I'm asking you is, do you see expertise in the group you're working with at the T of street knowledge as opposed to policy knowledge at the senior level?
Around mask
Yeah, around how the
compliance?
population is behaving on the streets in the environmental justice neighborhoods and cities.
I mean, so we have an understanding about ridership and how people are using our system and are responding to, you know,
Right,
the
but
demand.
you said you were interacting with people on the state's COVID committee, the management committee. And what I'm asking you is, do you think they have a sense of street behavior, which
I don't
is
think I
not
can
where they
speak for them.
live?
I'm sorry.
What?
I don't think I can speak for them. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I think
No,
we'll have
I'm
to have,
not asking you to speak for them. I'm asking for your observation.
I don't think I can make a judgment on that.
Okay, that's what I was afraid of.
yeah,
but
let's try to
thank
get
you.
them in. Let's try to get them in, Wig. You know, so and then they can tell us what they know.
Yeah, I'm not putting anything on Laurel. I'm just concerned there may be some disconnects there.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I mean, and I would say let's try to keep this one on the service plan and the service changes. And so of the people who are co-hosts and can't raise their hands, Brian, Craig, any of you want to jump in?
Yeah, this is Craig. I'll take us back towards this. I know I'm already looking ahead here. Because I appreciate the vast amount of work here, and I guess my question would be kind of lessons learned in terms of being able to ramp up or ramp down service in the future. So I'm just trying to take this forward to say, like, okay, we have a there's been a whole lot of work that's gone into this. There's been a whole lot of public meetings, and ultimately these service adjustments are going to be made, give or take the same time that a vaccine's coming out. So I guess my question are there lessons learned? I understand we still have a long way to go on this. And the vaccine for 20 million people across the country isn't going to make a dent. But are there any lessons learned here, or anything in terms of being able to ramp this up or ramp this down more quickly, or in terms of what analysis seems to be resonating with the public and be helpful versus what analysis maybe, for lack of a better word, is overkill? I'm just curious if we can kind of put in place policies and procedures around this, that God forbid this ever happened a year from now or 2 years from now, there would be a playbook that to follow. So hopefully lightening your load, at least in a small way, and allowing us to be more nimble to execute on these changes in a faster way.
So I think there's two types of changes. So first, I think we learned a lot on sort of how to, in the initial stages of the pandemic, about how to try to have more flexible, be able to respond to crowding flexibly on the bus network. And so that's something that is a balance between reliability and sort of addressing concerns more in real time, because what we ended up doing was not scheduling all of our runs. And so some runs could be sort of run as directed where there were reports of crowding, but that meant that there was, less buses in the schedule for sort of reliability of frequency. And so we've been sort of working that balance over the course of the whole pandemic as needed. So that's definitely been a lesson learned, I think, about how to do that, how to figure out that balance such that we can maximize our both reliability and flexibility in the given situation. In terms of, so it's all about managing uncertainty, right? And so we're still managing uncertainty, but the uncertainty now is more about what happens next year instead of what happens tomorrow. Although we are sort of preparing for, an uptick in cases that we're seeing. But so the uncertainty now is what happens next year. And so, like I said, the vaccine availability and how that gets sort of propagated out to a level in which we can safely relax social distancing guidelines is something where we don't know that timing, right? We might know when the vaccine starts. We don't know when it will be sort of been administered to the sense that we're comfortable with that. And then the economy, and then travel pattern changes. So those are the three buckets of types of changes that we're trying to think about and trying to make sure that we can respond to. And so I think that this is where scenario planning comes in. And we're really trying to figure out how to utilize sort of different scenarios to sort of understand what is the best option in multiple versions of the future, while at the same time trying to make sure that we are working to create the future that we want to live in, because we know that we're an input as well as an output into the regional economy. So there's I don't know if that answers your question, because essentially what we're learning about is how to manage to uncertainty, and it's never going to be the exact same next time. But that's exactly the lesson, is that how do you manage in a situation where you don't know what's going to happen? And so some of that is just putting in processes in place that allow you to do that, even though our planning techniques are, what the tools we have. So the next time we have this skill set of how we deal with uncertainty.
No, I appreciate that. I think you did a good job of answering the question. I think, to me, I view it as the uncertainty is always going to be there, but ultimately what we're planning for is either a ramp up or a ramp down in service, or I guess alternatively a shift in service. So it's about whatever causes that need to ramp up or ramp down. How do we do that more nimbly, and what are the changes? Maybe systemic changes, or more tactically, what are the tools that we need to have in place to allow us to do that in a faster, more efficient way?
Yeah, I think that's always going to be a challenge, because if I can go back to the budget chart, but like the vast majority of our budget is labor. And so we have to think about training. We have to think there's implementation timelines that take place to make sure that we can operate the system safely. And so there's like some things that we need to maintain, and safety is always sort of the number one priority. And so some things take time to ramp up and down just due to that.
Thanks, Greg. We have Carl.
One last follow up. I'm just going to. Is there anything you or your department are lacking or in need, or are in want or need of, that you feel that's hindered you at all? Like, do you have the right software packages? Do you have the tools? Are you happy with what you have, or is there anything we can do to kind of push for you to get additional resources to help in all this? Just because it is so incredibly data heavy and data driven.
Yeah, I mean, the MBTA has, I would say, I'm very proud of the data team that we have. So I think that the challenge is all of our old models are now broken, right? So we're having to rethink how to do all of our analysis without the models that we've traditionally used, because we can't necessarily assume them, and constantly having to be like, what data set can we use to analyze this problem, because our old data might not be accurate anymore, or 100% is likely not accurate anymore, right? So I'm not saying that like there's necessarily like a fix here, but it is very sort of challenging time to be doing data analysis, because there's so much uncertainty in the data as well. So we've had to be very creative in thinking about what data sets we have to use. And we've been able to leverage some newer data sets that are looking at travel patterns based on anonymized cell phone data that definitely has helped us be able to better understand travel during the pandemic that previously we didn't have. So we kind of lucked out that that data, we had just purchased that data set and we're able to kind of streamline that. So
that's a really great point and a really great insight. Thank you. I hadn't, my brain hadn't gotten there yet, but if I wasn't in a pandemic and you were asking me to service plan next week, I'd say, oh, it's Black Friday, ridership on Black Friday. Some companies are open, some are not. I'll go back year over year and see what we did last year on Black Friday, and then I'll see how we're trending overall ridership. If we're up 5% this year, I'll take last year's Black Friday number and bump it by 5%. But you don't have that luxury this year because we're in completely uncharted territory. There's never been all your models are broken as you put. So really insightful. Thank you.
Yeah. So I think that one of the things that we're going to have to do is as we recover is also to rebuild our data models. So like, even as some things as like wonky as our revenue allocation model, like how are we allocating revenue across the modes? Like that's changed. Like I mentioned that our revenue is lagging our ridership. So there's a bunch of different, all of our, things we've just normally relied on, we are going to have to rebuild, and that's going to take us some time.
So thanks again, Craig, and now Carl.
Thanks. So first, really glad you came to talk to us tonight.
Excuse me. This is Karen. I have a comment. Biden is coming in. Hi.
Karen?
Biden. Hello.
Karen?
Hello.
Karen, Carl is on, and then after Carl, we'll have you, okay?
Okay.
All right, thanks.
I wanted to follow up a little bit on what Craig was asking in terms of, in particular, ramping up after, like, if as part of the cuts you end up laying off dozens or hundreds of operators and other staff, but you want to do quarterly reassessments of capacity. From our own talking with folks about hiring, that's been really challenging when we were just trying to replace people who were leaving kind of in the regular course of turnover and retirement. So can you talk some about the, like, how do you, or for someone looking at the adjustments skeptically, of how would you be able to scale service back up as demand returns and as revenue returns from whatever source?
Yeah, I can't talk to it in a lot of detail because we're working with our unions, and it's a collective bargaining, current active collective bargaining, but we're trying to figure out how to be as creative as possible about that. Because partially be able to ramp service back up, but partially because we understand that our employees are, our very important resource and critical member of the team who've been working consistently throughout a pandemic. And so, yeah, we're working with our unions to figure out what to do.
Cool. And
thanks,
yeah,
Carl.
I mean,
I'm sorry. No, I thought you attended. No, please, if you have another follow-up, go ahead. Just wanted to get to Karen right after you.
No, it was just, I appreciate you also mentioning the fact that the operators and other staff at the T have been working under difficult conditions, and then to have a bunch of layoffs or furloughs or whatever conditions seems unkind, to put it kind of neutrally. That's it. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you.
My comment is, with Biden coming in, there may be a very significant amount of money coming to transit all over the United States. So it may not be a small amount of money. So I'm just wondering, I know you had part of your thing, an increase in resources, but this may be a super increase in resources.
Thanks, Karen.
Yeah, I'm afraid I can't speculate about that, but we are trying to plan so that we can respond should there be more resources.
Thanks, Karen. Hey, so haven't heard from Bonnie or Amy. I just want to make it clear that if you all want to ask or say something, you're welcome to do so. Just so you can unmute yourselves.
So actually, yeah, I just unmuted myself. Actually, I was going to ask Laurel. So Laurel, I've worked, I've been, a participant in the Rock for probably 10 years now, on and off. And I've worked in the hospitals in Boston for the past 20 years. And so what I'm hearing, I've been a commuter rail rider for 20 years. And so one of the things that I've been hearing a lot is a lot of companies are going to allow employees to permanently work from home. And so I know right now commuter rail, and a lot of us took the commuter rail, and I know that the ridership is down 80 to 90%. What's the and I know again, you've got to try to work with a crystal ball here and look at the future, but have you thought of things like that? What happens if the ridership never comes back over the next 10 or 20 years? That people just decide, you know what, I'm not going to commute into the city. I'm just going to stay home and I'm going to work from home. Like, have you thought of that? Is that in the works, the plans? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's part of the projection, like scenario models that we've been doing is telework rates.
Yeah.
And so we're thinking about that, and we're also surveying employers to get a sense of whether they'll change their policies, and we're surveying our riders to get a sense if they will want to continue to telework. I think that is why we're expecting the commuter rail to return slower than our bus, for example, because two of our bus riders have the ability to telework.
Gotcha.
And clearly,
I was on at the beginning and you jumped in a little bit afterwards, and I don't know if you heard me saying, so I've been in since March, probably 2 or 3 times per month. And I take the Franklin commuter rail and I get on at Forge Park. So I get on at the beginning of the line. And every single solitary time that I have gone in during this pandemic, I haven't paid a fare yet. Because in the beginning, they just weren't checking tickets at all. And I get it, because of social distancing or whatever. But the last couple of months, they come through and they asked for tickets. And I canceled my monthly pass back in March, because it's like $340 something or whatever. But now when I get on the train, I deleted the app. I actually never had the app on my phone because I always had a monthly pass. So I just pull out my credit card and I go to hand it to the conductor, and they look at me and said, "We're not taking a credit card," and they walk away. And so, like I said, there was the last trip that I took in 2 weeks ago, there was 6 of us going in and 4 of us coming out. But again, that's 5 or 6 fares. I don't want, and we were all socially distanced in the car. So I don't know if the other people had monthly passes or not, but mine was canceled and I had my credit card in my hand. And because being part of the, I expected to pay, and they just said, "No, we're not taking it," and just walked away. So I got a free ride every time. I haven't paid since.
Yeah, the expectation is that they will be collecting fares. I think that that's something you can, report to Keolis and let them know.
Yeah, I let Linda Dillon is a friend of mine. I'll text her and say, hey, they're not checking tickets, or they're not taking credit cards, and I don't know why. They used to have the little machine and it would print out the tickets.
Yeah, they still have that.
Yeah, they should have it. I mean, yeah, and I had my mask on. They could come near me, and take my credit card. But anyway. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Bonnie. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions. So the regions that are defined here, like Minuteman and Inner Core and North Shore, how were those defined?
Oh, this was just for the purposes of public meetings, and then we just named them some things instead of calling them Region 1, 2, 3, 4, so that people could find it in the schedule.
I thought that might be the case, because I'm hearing from the Arlington folks that they are essentially thinking that Inner Core means that service will come back faster. In Inner Core, it's going to be, you're just going to assess the system as a whole and bring back service based on that.
This was purely for public meetings.
I thought so, but I didn't want to say so without asking, so kind of on the question that Craig had though, it's like, do you have a sense, and you don't have to answer this now, it's like, what is it that municipalities can do in order to make sure that we do have the system that we want, both respect to transit, and transportation in general? I know that right now we're taking advantage of the situation in order to create more bus lanes, but are there other things that we might be able to do? I like the whole reimagining the bus network thing, because part of me thinks that even though the 79 is being eliminated, you can make a case almost for converting the 77, into a 79, and just running more rapid buses to Alewife, as opposed to going through Cambridge, all the way to Harvard Square, because you can take the Red Line to Porter and Davis, and that covers a lot of Cambridge and then on to Alewife. And so if you just had more rapid service going to Alewife, from Arlington Heights, and you kind of made that Mystic Valley Parkway or Alewife Brook Parkway part more bus friendly, then, because that's where it kind of gets clogged up. It could be a better way of running that particular service. So kind of that, with that as an example, are there things that you all are thinking about that municipalities can do to just help make us have a better system, regardless of how it comes back?
Yeah, I think the bus lanes have been huge. It's one of the most sort of amazing things that's come out of this time of crisis, is the amount of bus lanes we've been able to sort of commit to and construct with our municipal partners. And so definitely more of that, because as you know, it helps us use our bus service hours more efficiently and gets people where they need to go faster. Unfortunately, bus network redesign was supposed to be on the agenda for Monday, and we ran out of time. So hopefully that presentation will be coming up soon, and you'll be able to see the first beginning thinking of it, where we are sort of thinking about corridors and like So instead of thinking about routes to start off with, the way we structured the bus network redesign is thinking about demand, where do people need to go, and then thinking about high demand corridors, and then thinking about roadways, and then thinking about routes, so that way you can sort of create high demand corridors to have bus infrastructure on them. And then the routes don't all have to go to the same place at the ends, right? So you can have routes that sort of branch off and serve different parts of less demand, lower density areas. So that's the framework that we're using, and it's pretty exciting what we put together so far. So stay tuned for that presentation soon.
Yeah, that does
We will need to work really closely with our municipal partners on it. So definitely we'll be sort of coming out for help on that one. I think. Go ahead.
No, that's very exciting. No, and yeah, definitely, because even though I'm big involved in Arlington in a big way. I have emphasized that Arlington is part of a region, and the only way is going to work is if we think about things on a regional basis. We can't just be fighting for our own little municipality, because if we do that at the expense of the region, we're just selling ourselves short. So that's great. I'm looking forward to it. So anyone else? Any questions? Mr. Langevin, haven't heard from you. Amy, haven't heard from you.
No, Len, I think actually my questions have kind of already been asked and answered. So for the moment, I don't have any, but I will try to think of some as we go along here.
Okay, well,
thanks.
We don't have a whole lot of time left, so we can let Laura go early because I know she's been doing a lot of work lately. And Amy?
I'm all set, no questions.
Okay.
I enjoyed the presentation though.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Well, so maybe I've just been missing and not paying close attention. So how much savings are we getting?
So this base service proposal is annual savings of 128 million. So what we're, so if you see on this slide, so that is without, we haven't yet factored in the fare reduction losses from lost service, which we're working on. But this number here on this slide includes what we're planning on. That's the 128 is one fiscal year, and if we can save more in FY21, if some of them are implemented sooner, then we have the savings from FY21 to go into FY22. So that's why that number is larger.
Gotcha. All right, thanks. All right. Well, so yeah, we've started a little early, Laurel, and we gave a lot of time, but I think partly because we're familiar with the topic and your good answers. I mean, I think we can let you go. So thanks once again. I mean, we did luck out in getting you. Although I know anyone that would have shown up would have been very good. I mean, for us to talk, have a conversation with. So as always, thanks for being willing to talk with us and answer our questions, and whether at a meeting or anywhere else. So take care.
Thanks so much.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Happy
Laura.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Happy Thanksgiving. Healthy one too. All right. Well, I guess I'm doing the Wig co-chair. Have at it. I mean, I think we've covered the meetings.
Yeah, I've got nothing. If if folks have other things to bring up, they should. Otherwise, if anybody's got public comments, we can move to that if you want.
Right. Well, old business, new business. I sent out the calendar for the meetings next year, and so have a look at it. I think I take it into account the holidays. At least I checked for them. I checked for Passover, Rosh Hashanah, and Yom Kippur, so there are no conflicts there. And in December, because we try not to have meetings between Christmas and New Year's, the fourth Tuesday was going to fall between Christmas and New Year's, so I pulled all the meetings up for that month by a week. And so that's the only variation. And I'm just assuming, for the foreseeable, that we're going to be meeting online. So, and I say that because I have not talked with facilities to get any kind of rooms reserved. And so I'm anticipating when we are able to meet back in person, there will be a lag to our being able to do so because we just won't have the facilities at our disposal. So that's the deal with that.
So Len, there's not a December meeting on December 22nd, correct?
Oh no, I'm sorry. I was talking about December 21.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah,
never
sorry.
mind. Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm doing the calendar for December 21.
Oh,
and,
okay. Never mind.
yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. I try not to wait until December to put out that calendar. Normally, the calendar comes out earlier because we have to reserve the rooms. Have the rooms reserved by now. So usually that calendar is coming out in October.
Would that be December 21 or 22?
Well, I am a long range planner, Barry, but not that long range. 21.
December 2021.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me.
Yeah,
sorry.
Barry, I think you and I are thinking the same thing. I have a meeting on my books for December 22nd of 2020.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, 2021. Sorry, I was just because I was in the context of the year, I was dropping the first two digits. So sorry about that. Thanks for clarifying, folks. Apologize for the confusion. And so that's that. In terms of external meetings, and well, the MPO is dealing with the MBTA capital budget. Trying to think, at our last regional transportation advisory council meeting, I'm blanking out. I'm sorry. I'm the chair of that thing and I'm blanking out. I guess it wasn't that important. And maybe not particularly relevant to Rock. maybe it'll come to me if I stop thinking about conducting this meeting. So I guess at this point, as Wiggett said, anyone from the public wants to talk?
I'd like to speak if there's no one else.
Yeah, please, Barry.
This is down in the weeds about service changes. I do not have any knowledge about what the exact proposals are. However, I know that there are a lot of bus routes that even under good circumstances don't run very often, and which may be way out in the suburbs, where if they eliminate a bus route, which I'm not advocating, but if they eliminate a bus route, I don't want to be a potential passenger and be standing out there waiting for a bus that's not going to come. So from that standpoint, if a bus route has been eliminated, at least temporarily, they should put either a hood over the bus stop sign saying that this has been eliminated, and maybe telling you about alternate service if there is such. That's one item. Item two is there is some I think the 700 series buses which are contracted out to private companies, they may not have bus stops as such. They may just pick up any one who waves. So there should be some signs to the extent possible of service eliminations with possible other options. And a third point, and this is really down in the weeds, it was a couple of years ago, I was in the Montvale section of Woburn, walking down the street on Montvale Avenue near Central Street, and I saw a bus stop sign saying bus route 700 going to Boston, and it had a telephone number of 722 something 3200. Now I know even at that time there hadn't been a bus passed there in years, but the sign was still there. No one took the sign out. No one covered it up, and I'm trusting it to the kind graces of the MBTA to do something in a systematic way to tell the passengers that something is happening. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, Barry. I think they will too. And we might have a better chance, with something more systemic happening to the system, as opposed to a bus route being a couple of bus routes maybe being affected or stops being affected in the sporadic changes that they make. But I will say, like a black covering over the tombstone signs. They look enough like tombstones as it is. You put a black covering over it, it'll be like be just kind of sad. But I hear you. Yeah. So anyone else?
Len, this is Wig. I think Barry's first point is a good one. And maybe if we remember, we can bring it up in marketing and operations to ask somebody how they're intending to deal with bus stop signs if there's a radical change in service or even a dropped route like the 80 in Somerville. So Barry, thank you. I think that was a pretty good point.
Sure. And you can probably ask just send a quick email to Dave Carney about that. Even though I'm sure he doesn't deal with science per se, it's close enough to what he does. That he'd be able to give us a quickie update. So
I can speak a little bit about what I've seen near me. Two things for temporary or apparently temporary changes on the express routes. They put up laminated signs at all the stops saying that the 503 was suspended, but the 501 was stopping at Copley. And those seem to be holding up well. The other thing was the changes between 70 and 70A. And I forget what the new extension was from Waltham Center. They modified the signs to remove 70A from the signs.
That sounds
I
good.
haven't looked to see what they did for the 64 rerouting, where it they took off, I don't know, maybe a half-mile dogleg that it did. I haven't looked to see whether they just took that down the signs entirely or something else.
Yeah, that's great, Carl. Thank you. Len, one other thing. I'm hoping that either you or Emily can kind of keep your eye on any federal changes that we should be alert to with regard to if any new programs are offered under the new administration for capital stimulus or other things. I think that will come up, if not in our normal meetings. I think that will probably come up at the MPO, and
yeah, well,
probably worth watching.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I'm sorry for stepping on you. I mean, we don't have to keep our eye out for that. I mean, it's going to be shoved in our faces when it happens. I mean, it's just that, when anything comes up, any significant money, even when it's insignificant, any money comes up, I mean, it's put in front of you like, well, here's money. I mean, it usually comes with a project that wants to spend it. And so I mean, I appreciate your concern about it, but I don't feel as if I have to keep a check on federal registers or whatever, to make sure that I'm aware of what money the state's getting. I mean, it's just going to be known.
And I will say that within CTPS, we have certification activities, which monitors they're very connected with the federal government. I don't know the ins and outs of everything that they do, but they're constantly doing not only outreach, but also networking within the different agencies and monitoring certification activities. But, they would be in tune with what is going on, I would.
And who or what department kind of tracks that at CTPS?
So within CTPS, my best guess, and I, I'm still learning the ins and outs of what everybody does there too, is certification activities. The manager in charge of that is Jonathan Church.
Okay.
And then within that group, Kate White is the outreach coordinator, and she'd be a great point person to talk.
Yeah, and it may not actually pop up in certification. It may pop up in new transportation funding bills at the federal level, and those are. Like New Starts was an example years ago. So anyway, it won't necessarily be certification. It will.
Yeah, they also monitor different working groups within the MPO to get transportation departments talking with each other. They do a lot of inter and ITRA networking within MPOs and
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's too early to tell whether they would try to offer a blanket stimulus across the board, in which case it would certainly flow through in the normal course of business. For capital projects, normally, those are competitive bids and competitive proposals. And if you don't, so they're outside the course of certification usually.
Yeah,
and
so that also might butt up against, like, the MPO is distinct from the MBTA, and I'm sure the MBTA has someone in charge of looking after all of this as well.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, that wasn't our experience with the Green Line. We kind of had to stay on top of that ourselves and engage directly with the federal folks we met at national meetings. And anyway, I just wanted to put a little plug in for keeping your eyes and ears open, not to add work, but just to let us know.
Well, generally, and I mean, you've heard me say this many times, Wig. I mean, if there's something that we're asking someone else to do and we can do it ourselves, we should do it ourselves. And hopefully in the process, we find out that our efforts are being duplicated by others. Once we find that out, then we no longer have to do it. So then I would say let's take it upon ourselves to do it. I mean, and so if you know where to look, then.
Well, that's a good point. And
Yeah.
the place to look would be the senators first and the representatives second with regard to their position on the Federal Transportation Committee, especially the Joint Transportation Committee.
I mean, on the state level.
Be the place.
On the state level?
No, federal.
Federal. So then can you build a bridge to them?
Well, it used to be Capuano, and I haven't really paid as much attention because the Green Line is underway. And
it isn't so much a matter of who it is. It's like I'm asking you, do you have the bandwidth to build a bridge to whomever it is?
Well, I'll look it up. I don't have any bandwidth, but that's the normal case. So I'll look it up. I'll check tonight who's on the transportation committees.
Yeah, all right. Hey, well, I mean, try to make some bandwidth. That's what we're all doing, So, and if you can't, then we'll find someone who can do it. I mean,
okay.
And
well, that's good advice. Thank you.
But just cool. Thanks. So, anyone else anything new to add? Let me just check the chat here. Gotta go. That's Carl. He said, thanks for the night. Happy Thanksgiving. And I think I can say that to everyone. Have a healthy one. I mean, it's probably not going to be the Thanksgiving that you were planning on a year ago, but as long as you are around and trying to, if you're around enough to regret that this Thanksgiving isn't going to be the one that you planned on, then we're doing pretty well. Because it's just, pandemics are tough, huh? So take care, everybody, and see you hopefully in a month.
Thanks, Len.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Len.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Night.